Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com. As unshaven as ever during this quarantine. My stance on that is it's quarantine. Why shave? This is your goldenblack.com Daily Quarantine Simulcast for Wednesday, May 6th. It is brought to you by Fox Purdue Bookstores, Purdue Federal Credit Union, 6th Street Dive Restaurant, First Source Bank, East End Grill, and the Charters Team Remax Ability Plus. I want to remind you once again, if you're looking for a hell of a dinner or to support our local businesses or both, please keep in mind the 6th Street Dive in Lafayette, East End Grill in Lafayette, Arnie's in Lafayette, West Lafayette, and all over the state, Bruno's in West Lafayette, and the Whitaker Inn in West Lafayette. I'm sure they would all love to hear from you. Please do not call Purdue Federal Credit Union and ask for food because they won't have it. If you're new to the show, this is just our daily little Purdue conversation we're doing here to try to help you, I guess, kind of get through whatever malaise might come from quarantine 2020, as we shall call it. We've been taking feedback from readers about topics related to Purdue or whatever. We might get to the point here where we talk about our favorite breakfast cereals. I have no idea. But we've been taking soliciting, I keep getting that mixed up, soliciting input from readers about topics to discuss, and people have asked about expectations for football. Oh, one other thing, if you're accessing this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. We would appreciate it. Had a couple of people asking about expectations for football season. Obviously, the state of football season is very much up in the air. But I wanted to do something just kind of pretending like everything's normal, talk about the football season to come in order to stretch out the topics as best I can. I was going to do offense and defense in two separate videos. I wanted to start today with offense, kind of setting an expectation level, in my mind anyway, in our mind, an educated expectation level based on what to expect from Purdue from an offensive perspective this coming 2020 season in whatever form it may take. Obviously, Purdue needs to get better on offense than it was in 2019. A lot went into Purdue's struggles last season, obviously. Injuries first and foremost. What people have to keep in mind, too, is that the team that Purdue prepared to have all season long, all off-season last year, whether it was last spring, whether it was training camp, whatever it was, it didn't have. And its offense was built around having a senior quarterback and the ability to get the ball to Rondale Moore in every way, shape, or form possible. And Purdue had neither the senior quarterback for most of the season, nor did they have Rondale Moore. So basically your two pillars, I think, were taken away from you. That being said, Purdue lost at Nevada with as full a unit offensively as possible, as full a unit, period, everybody but Lorenzo Neal, basically. So there are no guarantees that had Purdue not incurred a single injury, Purdue would have had a great season. They would have had a better season, clearly, but there were no guarantees they would have had a 10, 11 win season, whatever number you want to put on it. But the Elijah Sindelar and Rondale Moore parts of this really, really affected the offense, obviously. And now, Purdue is going to have to go into a season with unknown parts at very important positions and get to a place where they can be better from an offensive perspective. You have an unbelievable foundation for this offense, probably almost one of a kind in terms of having Rondale Moore and David Bell on the same team. I think that it's not outlandish to suggest that the two best wide receivers in program history are on the roster at the moment. All due respect to the Dorian Bryants, the Taylor Stubblefields, the John Standifords. I hate comparing eras because it seems futile, but the Bart Burrells, the Calvin Williams, whoever it may be, all due respect to those guys, I hate comparing eras. But I think in the modern era, at least, Purdue has its two best guys on the same team, and that is an unbelievable luxury to have. I think both of these guys are special. I think both of these guys are stars, and Purdue only got a couple of games out of having both of them on the field last year, and they did not have them playing together when peak David Bell was was apparent. They had Rondale Moore early in the season. David Bell's best football was played later in the season. They did not have the combination thereof at any point in time this season. Knock on whatever substance my desk is for Purdue, they will have those guys all season long. They will have them healthy. Obviously, there are never any guarantees. Rondale Moore is coming off an injury-plagued season. David Bell has had his share of uh, little issues he's had to overcome. He's coming off surgery himself. But in the best case scenario, both those guys are 100% all season long and give Purdue a really, really formidable tandem of wide receivers. One that probably doesn't get the attention nationally it should as one of the best in the country because Purdue probably didn't have a great season last year. And to a certain extent, Rondale Moore might be a little bit out of sight, out of mind because he didn't play a whole lot last season. Also, with the wide receivers, Ahmad Anderson's a hell of a player, a hell of a young player. And if it weren't for the star power around him, we would be talking about him a lot more than we are. Milton Wright, I think, can be a really, really good college player. I think TJ Sheffield, you didn't see him last season. Jackson Anthrop is obviously a known commodity, a productive player, a guy who, these are all guys who, if it wasn't about Rondale Moore and David Bell, we would be talking, these guys alone would be the best wide receivers on a couple of Purdue teams that came before them. But Purdue is just stacked at wide receiver. And that's a really good position to be in. Mershawn Rice coming off redshirt last year, Malik Carr coming in, Abdur Rahman Yassin coming in, just really a wealth of riches. That is a redundant term, I know, at wide receiver for Purdue. They have weapons. The issue next season for Purdue is they've got to get good to very good quarterback play because this is probably a one-year window you have with Moore and Bell, considering Rondale Moore will be eligible for the NFL draft after this season. You have to get quarterback play good enough to maximize the value of your assets around that quarterback play, and that is an unknown. Obviously, Aiden O'Connell did some really positive things for Purdue last season. I think you'd probably like to have a little bit more physical talent back there. Jack Plummer did some really positive things before he got hurt. I think that consistency, I think improvement for him are musts. Obviously, Austin Burton comes in as a graduate transfer from UCLA with the daunting, formidable task of having to learn an offense, on the fly in the summer. And this is not a simple offense. This isn't playground football they're playing here. This isn't Tecmo Bowl where you have 4 plays to memorize and then you're good. This is a complicated deal, a lot to learn for any quarterback. It's going to be very difficult for him to master all of that in a very, very short period of time in advance of a season with no spring ball, no real summer to speak of. Just the deck is stacked against him, but he is a good player. He's played at a high level in college before. Who knows? But people often say that if you have 3 quarterbacks, you don't have one quarterback. And I agree with that, but only to a certain extent. Purdue obviously will have every opportunity here prior to the season to prove they do have a quarterback. Who it's going to be, we don't know. We will find out. But obviously, not having spring ball, the full extent of spring ball to this point has kind of left that up in the air a little bit. We've talked about that in prior videos, the effect that this offseason will have on college football. Other than quarterback, obviously, the offensive line is an issue for Purdue, a question for Purdue seemingly every year. It's just been a place where Purdue's had a really hard time putting together upper half Big Ten sorts of offensive lines for one reason or another. It is a hard position to recruit. It is a hard position to recruit and develop. But it is a need once again for Purdue for market improvement. I think Purdue has a good building block in Grant Herman's at offensive tackle. I think he can be a very good player. I think Purdue has to find a lot of answers around him. I think Purdue, its young guys last year, the Will Bramels, the Eric Millers, who were thrust into more prominent role or very prominent roles right away last season, have to get better. How much personal improvement one can make in a truncated offseason like this one, I don't know. Purdue has a graduate transfer committed named Greg Long. We'll see what he's capable of doing. but Purdue needs answers on that offensive line. Purdue needs that offensive line to be much better than it was last season, to be healthier than it was last season, and just to not be a deficiency. If they can get to the point where they're just okay, I think that's probably enough. I think the coaching staff too has to do also a better job playing to its offensive front strengths as opposed to its weakness. We talked in a video a while back. This is all run together for me. Purdue's got to be better in short yardage, and when you're asking your offensive line to carry the mail on 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2 against high-end Big Ten defensive fronts, you're not necessarily playing to their strengths. I think you got to scheme your offense a little bit to take some of the burden off your offensive line. This is always going to be a vertical passing sort of offense, so there's always going to be a lot of positions where you're asking those guys to hold their blocks and pass protection for a long period of time. But I think you just need to do the best you can to work around your offensive line's potential deficiencies. That's on the coaching staff as much as it is the offensive line sometimes. I think from a weapons perspective, we talked about the wide receivers, the tight ends. Obviously, you miss Bryson Hopkins, one of the best players, one of the best tight ends in college football last season. I think Payne Durham is a good player. We'll see how he transitions into a more prominent sort of every down role. He was I know Purdue recruited him for his blocking. They really liked him as a blocker. I can't tell you for sure how he fared in that area last season, but he did catch a bunch of touchdowns too. I think he proved to be a pretty solid red zone guy, but he was also playing off Bryson Hopkins too. In the red zone, a lot of attention went to Bryson Hopkins, and that allowed Purdue to kind of sucker punch some people by getting Payne Durham open around him. He won't have that luxury this year. He will, however, have the luxury of Rondale Moore and David Bell, theoretically. So it's not like there isn't that alpha out there that everybody's going to have to worry about. So I think Payne Durham can be a really good player, but I think Purdue's got some really good players, too, coming up behind him. Kyle Bilodeau and Garrett Miller are two redshirt freshmen who I think can be really, really good players based on the very little I've seen of them. Both of them look the part. That I can tell you for damn certain, 100% certainty. Both of them are athletic enough for big guys to be very good players, and I think the best is very much yet to come for them. Those guys both look like high-end Big Ten players. Purdue doesn't often get that tight end who walks right in the door and looks that way right away, but also backs it up with athleticism, with ball skills, with all the other stuff that can make a tight end a really complete player. So I think the position where you lose the best player relative to other positions, I think that is also the position where you have some of the most exciting prospects on your roster. The running back position, obviously, Purdue would like to be balanced as best they can, would like to be able to run the ball effectively. A lot depends on, the effectiveness of the passing game. A lot depends on, the strength of the offensive front. That's what people don't get about the running game sometimes. It's not just dependent on handing it off, making the right block, making the right play, and going. It's about how off balance you can put a defense with your passing game, how you can execute everything else around it. But Purdue has some really nice weapons too. At running back, I think King Daru can be a really, really good player at Purdue. I think he showed that as a freshman last year. I think Xander Horvath, there's very much a role for him in this offense based off not just what he did against Indiana, but his skill set too. DeJohn Hewitt, don't know what necessarily to expect from him, the freshman who played a little bit last season. Tyreek Murphy, the true freshman, coming in, was the running back Purdue wanted in recruiting. Last season, they recruited him expecting there to be a golden opportunity for him to be the guy right away. Whether that's still the case or not with the season King Daru had, I don't know, but there is certainly an opportunity there for Tyreek Murphy to earn a bunch of carries in tandem with King Daru, with probably Xander Horvath mixed in. At all levels of football, and they say that, the NFL trickles down to college. At all levels of football, it seems like the running back position is going more platoon, going more committee, going more niche based, and everybody wants to have a couple of good backs they can rotate in, keep fresh, whatever else, and Purdue might be in that position here. Young, yes, because King Daru is only a true sophomore. Xander Horvath really only played at running back last season, and obviously Tyreek Murphy would be a true freshman. DeJohn Hewitt barely played last season as a true freshman. Purdue is young there, but Purdue does have some talent there. So Purdue does have, across the board here, Purdue does have some really, really promising pieces in place to be a pretty good offense. I think they have to find a way to maximize the value of their assets, and they have to do it during this very, very uncommon offseason. That will not be easy, but also as promising as some of these pieces are for Purdue offensively, there are gigantic questions here. Again, oftentimes offenses, especially in quarterback-driven offenses like the ones Purdue's will be as long as Jeff Brom is here, you are probably often only as good as your quarterback play. And, quarterback play for Purdue right now is a bit of an unknown. You have a bunch of guys who've done something, but guys who still have a lot more left to prove, whether it's Aiden O'Connell, whether it's Jack Plummer, or whether it's a guy who's not even put on a Purdue uniform yet in Austin Burton. And then the offensive line, you would like to be a little bit more authoritative at the line of scrimmage, shall we say. You would like to be able to keep your quarterbacks cleaner than you could last season. But, Purdue does have a lot of pieces in place, but still a lot of questions in place as well. But Purdue has to be much better offensively than it was last season. And I think if it stays healthy, which is a big if considering what just happened this year, I think it has every opportunity to do that. So that will be obviously job one for Purdue in terms of its keys to success. We will obviously talk about the defense in a subsequent video. I don't know if I'm astute enough or have the breadth of knowledge enough to do a whole video on special teams, but that's equally important as well. So that's what I've got for today. That's Purdue's offense in a 16, 17-minute nutshell for you. So this has been your goldenblack.com Daily Quarantine Simulcast, and I'm choking. It's brought to you by Fox Purdue Bookstores, Purdue Federal Credit Union, the 6th Street Dive Restaurant, First Source Bank, East End Grill, and the Charters Team Remaxability Plus. If you want a great dinner, once again, 6th Street Dive, East End Grill, Arnie's, Bruno's, Whitaker, and keep them in mind. You won't be sorry if you patronize any of those establishments. So for Brian Neubert from goldenblack.com, thanks everybody for watching, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you again tomorrow, Thursday. Thanks.